بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد. So after a gap of about 2 weeks, we go back to the life of the Prophet ﷺ. And we covered Ma'rakatu Hunayn, the Battle of Hunayn. And again, this specifically, this point in the seerah, there's a lot of lessons to be learned. And the reason is, it's a turning point. It's a turning point. Here the Muslims take over Mecca, and thus they become a dominant power for the first time in their history. The first time in their history, they become a dominant power in the Arabian Peninsula. And that's a huge shift. Moving within talking about 10 years, almost 10 years, from being persecuted, chased out of Mecca, into the most powerful government or state or body in the Arabian Peninsula, and taking over Mecca, which is sort of the capital of the Arabian Peninsula. That's about 200 years put in 10, condensed in 10. It's such a rapid change, but there is a lesson there. Is that the Prophet ﷺ, if you remember, were about 13 years in Mecca. He was doing a lot of work and he was doing a lot of da'wah, and he was seeing very little results, sometimes no results. So this was a lot of effort being put, and it doesn't seem to be pay off immediately. And by the way, this is another universal rule that that plays out in different forms in life. That you sometimes put an effort into some kind of a project or an endeavor or anything. You just invest a lot of effort, and it doesn't seem to pay off. It might seem to fall flat and not produce results, and you might say, okay, all my effort went to waste. Well, if you did that sincerely from your heart, and you were honest and authentic in putting in your effort, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to let this go to waste. It's going to pop up somewhere else. It's going to pop up somewhere else, and it will appear to you. Some of the scholars quote the story in Surah, the story of Al-Khidr, Musa alayhi salam with Al-Khidr in Surah Al-Kahf, with regards to the wall that Al-Khidr and Musa, they find in a city, and obviously Musa fixes that wall, which was almost about to fall. It was leaning, it was almost falling. So he fixes it. And Musa says to Al-Khidr, why did you fix it? We should have asked them to pay us for this work, because they haven't given us they haven't showed any type of hospitality. They didn't offer us food, although we're hungry and we're guests. So then when Al-Khidr explained to him why he fixed that wall, he said, under this wall there was a treasure. And the treasure belongs to these kids, young kids. They haven't reached puberty, they haven't reached adulthood, so they can dig out their treasure. It was left for them by one of their forefathers. Some of the Mufassirin say it was their 7th grandfather, great-grandfather, who actually left that. And he says, وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا. Their father or their grandfather, he was a righteous person. So it pays off afterwards. It paid, the fruits of his work showed in the 7th grandchildren, 7th generation. And that's profound, and sometimes that's how life works. So sometimes you might actually put in an effort in a lot of, maybe in a study, studying a field or something, and it doesn't really give you the fruits. But by the way, the fruits are built in your sincerity, in your act or experience of going through that challenge and being honest and sincere in challenging yourself. You have already built your success. And doesn't necessarily show immediately in the form of immediate results. It actually shows up later on. It shows up later on. I don't recall who made that statement. It was very powerful. And it was one of someone contemporary. He said, you get rewarded in public for years of hard work in private. You get rewarded in public for years of hard work that you did in private. So again, you find the Prophet ﷺ putting in a lot of effort in the Meccan period. Doesn't seem to be a lot of results. But now all of them are just going to arrive at once. All just going to be, flowing in abundance into the life of the Prophet ﷺ. By the way, in a sense, we still live in the momentum. A lot of the advantages that we have is a momentum of the hard work that was put by the Prophet ﷺ and the early companions in the early stages of the Muslim da'wah. So this is why there's a lot of lessons. So there is a lot of rapid change. Muslims were turning into a major power in the world so rapidly and so quickly in a short period of time, and the whole dynamics of their life and their situation changes. And you can see how the Prophet ﷺ and the companions are actually rising up to the challenge and really handling the situation very wisely. The Prophet ﷺ keeps up with the challenge. The Prophet ﷺ, you can see the growth of his skill and insight and management is profound. You can see an acceleration there. So this is why we're going to stop by some of the events and really try to draw lessons and benefit from them. So the story that we finished with last time was when the Prophet ﷺ was handing out the spoils of war, and we said this is al-fay. So we divided the war booty or the spoils of war into two types. There is a salb, which is in the battlefield, you face one person of the enemy, and that person has some property. They have their weapons on them, they have their armor and their shield, and they might have some property, like they might have their horse and their camel, and maybe there are some goods in it. Sometimes it has gold and silver, like these people have brought some of their wealth with them. So if you kill that person, then their personal property becomes yours. This is called a salb. This was a universal rule that is observed all over the world. This is called a salb. So the very person that you kill, you get whatever they have, their property, that's yours. But after the war, there is some kind of a collective property that belonged to the whole group of your enemy. So if you are victorious in the battlefield, that is given to the commander of the army, to the leader, and there is a way to distribute that. There's a way to divide it. This is called al-fay. So the Prophet ﷺ was handing this out, mainly the majority of it, to the new Muslims from Mecca, the new Muslims in Mecca, who in the past chased the Messenger ﷺ and the companions out of Mecca, and to some of the still recent Muslims like Banu Sulaym, for example, who still joined the Prophet ﷺ in his march to Mecca, but they were relatively new Muslims. So the Prophet ﷺ was giving these people lots, like he was giving 100 camels to this person and 100 camels to that person, and that's a huge wealth. It really, like in today's money, it's in the millions. So he was handing these people, and these were the tyrants of Quraysh, but now they were Muslim or new Muslim. So we said there was a man who was called Dhul Khuwaysira, and some narrations indicate that his name was Hurqus. And Hurqus, by the way, he turns out to be one of the ones, this guy Hurqus, he's one of the one who revolts or rebels against Uthman radiyallahu anhu. He was actually one of the people who attacked the house of Uthman radiyallahu anhu when he was the Khalifa, and they killed him. And if my memory is my memory is still okay, he was one of those who conspired to kill Ali ibn Abi Talib. Although he was previously, before that, he was with the army. He was one of the commanders in the army of Ali ibn Abi Talib, or one of the, because he was a very strong, physically strong person. So the Prophet ﷺ was sort of handing out those spoils of war, and this man Hurqus or Dhul Khuwaysira, he says, "Ya Muhammad," he screams to the top of his voice in front of everyone. He says, "Ya Muhammad, i'dil, inna hadihi qismatun la yuradu biha wajhullah." He says, "Ya Muhammad, be just. This kind of distribution is not for the sake of Allah." He's saying to the Prophet, he's saying, "Ya Muhammad." He's calling the Prophet ﷺ with his bare name. This was disrespectful, regardless of the content of his message and the style that he was delivering that message in. The companions were shocked. Umar al-Khattab says, "O Messenger of Allah, let me just chop off the head of this guy." But the Prophet ﷺ handled it well. He turns to him and says, "Wayhak, man ya'dil in lam a'dil." He says, "Woe to you. Who's going to be fair and just if Muhammad ﷺ is not going to be fair and just?" Because the Prophet ﷺ is guided by revelation. And this shows, by the way, that sometimes the truth might not be straightforward, in the sense we might not be able to see it straight away. So oftentimes the truth is supposed to be clear. But sometimes in complex situations, you might want to be patient before you make a judgment. You might want to be patient before you make a judgment. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the way, gives this advice to the believers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن جاءكم فاسق بنبأ فتبينوا أن تصيبوا قوما بجهالة فتصبحوا على ما فعلتم نادمين. O you who believe, if someone comes to you with news, with some kind of news, telling you something about a person or about a group of people, this or that, then verify it. Double check. Double check. Before you act, lest you act on that and then you regret it. And how often we hear something, hey, so-and-so said this and that. You go and react based on that. And what happens when you really investigate, it turns out to be, that's not the case. That's not the case. So this is a Quranic principle. The Prophet ﷺ, again here, he realized a person like Hurqus is saying that the Prophet ﷺ is giving more to these new Muslims. He's giving them a lot, and you can tell like he's not going to get a share. He's not from those who's going to get a share. So for him, well, yeah, Muhammad, you're not being fair. You're not being just. So this is absolutely problematic. Again, the lesson here is you need to be patient. Sometimes the truth might not like really reveal itself fully to you, depending if the situation is complex. And by the way, this is the trick as well used by some people to deceive others. So some people play games and they say like, obviously like they're not doing the right thing. And when you question that, they say, well, sometimes the truth does not reveal itself. So this is a double-edged sword. It could be used both ways. It could be used by deceptors, by people who are trying to play games, but sometimes it's true. So this is why you need to develop the shrewdness and the patience to see through it. Be patient. Don't act on your immediate or first impressions. You need to be careful. You need to be careful. And this happens a lot, by the way. It happens a lot between Muslims when there is a matter of difference of opinion. By the way, there are fiqhi opinions that when you read them, or you read the argument of one scholar, they will say, the argument is such and here is the proof. And it seems to be straightforward. It seems to be like it can't be anything else. Like there's no way. No one who holds another opinion has a point. You already jump to conclusions, but you don't know. You don't know what the argument of that person is, of the other opinion is. So you can't, as a person, as a layman, as an average Muslim, what you can do, okay, like this sounds to me to make sense. This is a scholar that I trust and I usually look up to and I take from them. But don't get into other areas. Now you start seeing someone who does something differently. For example, maybe in the prayer, some people like when they first go on their hands, on their palms. Then when they go for sujood, they put their hands first, then they put their knees first. You're going to find some people who put their knees first, then their hands first. So you might read a book or read a fatwa from a scholar that says, well, no, you put your hands first because the hadith such, and that's it. It's clear. So you say there's no way the other opinion has proof. It's so straightforward, right? So you start seeing someone who prays when they put their knees first. You say, brother, you're praying wrong. Okay, now you transgress the limit. You transgress the limit because you don't know. You don't have the knowledge that gets you to make that statement. You might want to ask the brother. You might want to say, brother, I read otherwise. Like, well, what do you, probably you know something I don't know. Give me advice. Where did you get this from? Maybe that person doesn't know. They're just following another scholar and that's it. But the reality is when you investigate that opinion, you're going to find the scholars on the other side, they have proofs as well. And they seem to be very powerful. So again, unless you have the tools to, side with one of them, you can't. You just can't. And you shouldn't. So you follow a scholar and you know their evidence. And that's what you do. That's what we call mutaba'at al-ulama. You follow the scholars based on their evidence. You ask what the evidence is. What is the proof, the hadith or the verse that substantiates their point, and perfect, good. But you do not go out policing people, telling them, hey, that's wrong. Why? Because that's not how I learned it. And the thing is, sometimes if you do that with people who don't know, you might seem to have the upper hand. But if you come across a person who knows what they're talking about, they will make you feel bad. They make you look bad. They make you look bad. And I remember, like I myself personally, at some stage, I used to do this thing with some of the rulings. I used to say, oh, that's it. It can't be any other way. But then I speak, and I'm full of confidence that I know this issue inside out. I thought I did. So and I go and tell this, that's wrong. That's not how you do it. But that person was a learned one. He said, okay, why is it wrong? Come on, let's go through it. I said, here is the ruling, here's the evidence. It's so straightforward. He says, okay, what about this evidence, which is hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari? That's what the Prophet ﷺ says. And it suggests the opposite of what you say. And here I start to scratch my head. I never thought of that, right? So then I go back to the books. I read the books of the scholars. I realize, man, it's not so simple. Or it's not so simplistic. So again, this is the mistake that Hurqus fell into, and he did that very audaciously. He was very bold in his approach to the Prophet ﷺ. It was inappropriate. That's not how you speak to the Prophet ﷺ. And look how the high level of character of the Prophet ﷺ. You are victorious. You know when people are victorious, what they do? They become tyrants. In the hype of victory, and you see, like you're about to say, I'm God. You're just going to say, Ana Rabbukumul A'la. That's how humans are. Read history. When people are victorious, they do strange things like you won't think that a normal human being would do. In all civilizations and in all cultures, by the way. That's how humans behave. When humans are victorious, they become, it's very likely for them to become savages. Really. So the Prophet ﷺ is victorious, and he could be taken by the hype of this victory, but this man is challenging him with a sign with a finger, just a sign with his own finger. The Prophet ﷺ could get this man killed. But the Prophet ﷺ responds to him. The Prophet ﷺ sees the bigger picture. He's not taken by the hype. He's not disillusioned by his victory. He's still focused on the whole spectrum, or the full context of reality. Barakallahu feek. And that is, so when Umar al-Khattab hears this conversation, and the Prophet ﷺ replies to this man, Umar says, O Messenger of Allah, let me chop off the head of this hypocrite. The Prophet ﷺ, what does he say? He says, Ya Umar, لا يقول الناس أن محمدا معاذ الله أن يتحدث الناس أني أقتل أصحابي. No, I don't want people to say Muhammad is killing his companions. I don't want this to happen. Then the Prophet ﷺ talks about how these people are going to manifest themselves in the sense they will seem to quote the Quran, they will seem to worship Allah, they will seem to read the Quran, but they don't really understand it, they don't really comprehend it. And this is an advice for people who start to study the deen, study the religion. Don't jump to conclusions. Really, know your own worth. Know your own worth. You don't, especially when it comes to declaring other people to be wrong or just pointing out their mistakes. It's really, as the Arabs say, لَيْسَ هَذَا بِعُشِّكِ فَدْرُجِ. This is not your business. This is not your area. You're not qualified to do that. You're not qualified. And imagine if the Muslims really do that. They don't jump to conclusions attacking others. We would have a lot of peace. We'd have a lot more harmony. And less partisanship and division and so on and so forth. So the Prophet ﷺ was aware. Here is the strategic understanding of a situation. Immediate situation calls for your authority is being challenged in front of everyone. Instead, you don't act based on your ego. You actually act based on your wisdom. So you see the whole situation and you realize, now I have to act wisely. I have to take consequences in consideration. I should not just act on impulse, because usually when you act on impulse, you will regret it. The consequences will be great. So the Prophet ﷺ holds back and he says, leave him, leave this man. And the Prophet ﷺ is aware that there will be more damage coming through this person and others like him. And sometimes there are things you cannot eliminate. There are evils you cannot eliminate. And that's why they say if you can't change it, you have to change yourself. If you can't eliminate it, you have to learn how to live with it. There are facts about life. There are things that cannot be changed. That are unpleasant. You have to learn to live with them. We can't change everything. Whatever you can change, you should actually go ahead and do it. But what you can't change, you have to learn to live with it. You have to learn to live with it. There is a beautiful qaida or maxim in fiqh, or qawaid al-fiqhiyya. And it's very powerful. It shows how practical Islamic fiqh is. it says, the rule says, المنهي عنه شرعا ليس كالمعدوم حسا. If something is haram, something is legislatively haram, it should not be there. But actually, it's there. It's done, like someone is doing it. We don't treat it as if it's not there. We don't treat it as if it is not there. We deal with it as if it's there already. That's very practical. It's very practical. Because, for example, a person tries to commit, let's say, zina, and on their way to committing zina, and you know they're going to commit zina, they happen to trip, or maybe there's like a hole in the street, and they happen to trip and fall in that pit, and they need help. Okay, if you're gonna treat that person based on their sin, you wanna take it overboard, you might say, okay, since you went for a sin, that's your punishment. I'm not gonna help you. I say no. We separate that. Now, this position as a human being in this situation, you need to help them. You need to help them. So the sin has its measure, but if it's a reality, we deal with it. We deal with it as a fact of life. Okay, let's move on. We said, as the Prophet ﷺ, after in this situation, being victorious after Hawazin and Thaqif, the two tribes of Ta'if, they run away, and some of them actually come and they join the Prophet ﷺ, and they embrace Islam, they become Muslim. One of the ones who come was an older woman, and we said she was from Banu Sa'd, and she turns out to be Halima as-Sa'diyya, who the nursing mother of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Halima as-Sa'diyya. So when she came, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam took off his cloak and he put it on the ground for her to sit on it. And then she sat with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We don't know whether she became Muslim or not, but it seems from that kind of interaction, probably it's pretty likely in that situation that she actually became a Muslim. Now, we said the Prophet ﷺ gave all these new Muslims, the leaders of Quraysh and the leaders of the other tribes, he gave them a lot, to the point that the spoils of war ran out and some people got nothing. Specifically, the Prophet ﷺ also gave the Muhajirin who were originally from Mecca. The Prophet ﷺ gave them a share. The ones who got nothing, literally nothing, were the Ansar from Medina. They were the Ansar from Medina. So they they felt left out. They felt like it's a very awkward situation. Like, obviously the human nature is, their immediate kind of thinking is, well, we made a lot of sacrifice. We are the ones who welcomed the Prophet ﷺ in Medina after he was chased. We're the ones who gave him shelter. We are the ones who put ourselves in a position of enmity towards all of the Arabs in the Arabian Peninsula to protect the Prophet ﷺ and give him shelter, give him a city. And we helped him and we helped establish all of this. And now when it pays off, we're left out. So a good number of them felt that way. To the point that even Hassan ibn Thabit radiallahu anhu, the poet, the great poet of Ansar, he made some kind of lines of poetry, initiated. And obviously poets at the time, like, it's just like rappers. Sometimes you have very good rappers who just they come up with it, right? On the spot. You speak, you have a conversation with them, there's a situation, they start rapping. They just make it up on the spot, right? This is how poetry was at the time. For them, poets, they could just speak poetry. Like would just come out naturally. It's not like rehearsed or prepared. They just pop up in their head and they speak poetry. That's it. So Hassan Muthabit was like this. So he has some lines of poetry. I want to just quote the main ones that are very strong. Like, they talk about the situation very straightforward. So he he's basically like we're taken by sadness and by tears, and we're feeling like sort of left out. And then he says, he praises the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, "Wa'ti Rasulullah faqul ya khayra mu'tamanin." Come to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and say, "You are the one that we trust the most." للمؤمنين إذا ما عدل البشر. He's the best among humanity. على ما تدعى سليم وهي نازحة أمام قوم هم آووا وهم نصروا. Why do you give and favor Banu Sulaym, like when they used to be the enemies of the Muslims and they fought against the Muslims many times? Like, why do you give them and you sort of offer them something when there is another group of people who they are the one who championed you and supported you? سماهم الله أنصارا لنصرهم دين الهدى وعوان الحرب تستعر. Allah called them the Ansar. Allah called them the helpers when they were supporting the religion of Allah, and they are the ones who really, like when the battlefield was at its highest, at the peak, they are the ones who jumped right into it. وجاهدوا في سبيل الله واعترفوا للنائبات فما خاموا وما ضجروا. So, and they fought for the sake of Allah, and they faced the most difficult situations, and they never cowered, like they were never acted cowardly, and they never gave up on you. والناس ألب علينا ثم ليس لنا إلا السيوف وأطراف القنا وزر. And when we sort of gave you shelter, everyone took a position of enmity against us. Like we compromised on all our relationships. We sort of set ourselves like in like we were sitting ducks for everyone just because we gave you shelter. Then he talks about how powerful the Ansar is in the battlefield, and he talks about Badr, and he talks about Uhud. So basically it was some sort of like, why is this happening? Why is this happening? So the younger ones among them, then they were saying, يغفر الله لرسول الله يعطي قريشا ويتركنا وسيوفنا تقطر من دمائهم. The younger ones among the Ansar, still the youth, they say, may Allah forgive Allah's messenger. May Allah forgive the messenger. He is giving Quraysh and he's leaving us. He left us. And our swords are still dripping with their blood. Like we are the ones who used to fight them in Badr, in Uhud, in Al-Khandaq, in the Battle of the Trench and other battles. We are the ones who defended him against them, and their blood is still on our swords. And now he gives them, the results of all of this work. Some of them also said, إذا كانت الشدة فنحن ندعى وتعطى الغنائم غيرنا. So they said when it's like when the going gets tough, we are called upon. But when the spoils of war and the blessings are being distributed, we are left out. Others are being given. Some of them also said, the Messenger ﷺ finally reunited with his people, indicating, okay, now he's going to forget us. He's just going to join his people. Sa'd ibn Ubadah, being one of the main leaders of the Ansar, realizes, man, this is a troubling situation. And by the way, here are lessons with how to deal, because sometimes good people, they panic. Good people have doubts about one another, have misunderstandings. We're going to see a very sensitive situation here and how to handle it, how the companions, how the Prophet ﷺ handled it. You're going to see the main theme here is being truthful and straightforward, no deception and no hiding. No hiding. You're very clear about everything. You're straightforward about everything. You state all the facts. And you don't hide stuff. You might, because oftentimes in difficult situations we say, no, I'm just going to be nice. No, don't be nice. Don't be nice. Be straightforward. Be straight up when it's the truth. Obviously you have to be respectful, but you don't hide facts saying, okay, yeah, it's okay. Yeah, you're not happy, but you just swallow that and you're going to move on. Man, you're setting yourself up for a bad relationship, because that's going to germinate. You're going to suppress that. It's going to germinate inside you, and it's going to grow into a monster that will destroy that relationship. And that's what happens with marriages. That's what happens with marriages. So usually among spouses, if something goes wrong, there's a situation, you feel like your wife did not treat you well. She said something and it wasn't nice. You might say, okay, I'll forget it. I'm a good husband. I'm just going to let that go. Well, if it really hit you, you shouldn't do that. Maybe you should wait until things calm down, but you should bring it up. Hey, listen, I can't get over this. you said such and such, or you acted in this way, and it's not settling with me. Let's fix it. Let's fix it. Let's bring it up. So if I'm going to allow it in, it has to go in nicely when it's a good shape. Otherwise, you will be swallowing some poison, and it will get into a monster later on. So Sa'd ibn Ubadah sees all of this. He realizes, man, we need to deal with this. We need to deal with this. He himself is not able to give answers to those younger ones. So what does he do? He goes to the Prophet ﷺ and he says, Ya Rasulullah, إن هذا الحي من الأنصار قد وجدوا عليك في أنفسهم لما صنعت في هذا الفيء الذي أصبت فقسمت في قومك وأعطيت عطايا عظاما في قبائل العرب ولم يكن في هذا الحي من الأنصار منها شيء. He says, O Messenger of Allah, the Ansar are having issues with the way you distributed the war booty. They're having issues with that. Straightforward. We're not playing games here. That's the situation. Okay, let's figure out how to deal with it. So they see that you have given a great deal to your people, Quraysh, and you have given great gifts to the Arabs, other Arab tribes, and the Ansar got nothing. Now this is a moment of extreme, like radical honesty. Radical honesty. And that's what this situation requires. Oftentimes people would like just to sort of, just let it go, man. Like you would say to the youth, forget it, it's all right, man, it's all right. Like it's not a big deal, right? Well, it might sound nice, but as the Arab poet as well, إذا ما الجرح رم على فساد تبين فيه إهمال الطبيب. Now, if you have some kind of wound and you don't treat it properly, you just don't disinfect it, and you just wrap it, if it's contaminated, it's going to, deteriorate. It's going to grow worse. There will be infection, there will be issues and complications, right? So again, this is a situation you need to deal with it properly. It might be painful. It might be painful to open that cut and clean it and fix it. It's painful. It's not pleasant. You don't want to deal with that, right? But it's not good. It's not good as a long-term plan. It's going to just make things worse. And by the way, that's how most of us deal with their life. There's an issue, an emotional issue, psychological issue, or relational, as I said, in marriage. Or maybe just your own, you've been through an experience, through a situation, and it really hits you deep. And when you do, you just want to run away from it. Instead of you facing it and dealing with it and fixing it once and for all, you sort of swallow it and think it's going to go away by you ignoring it. Very bad strategy. Very bad strategy. So it's just going to go deeper inside and it's going to mess up your psyche. And then it's going to appear, it's going to show up in very bad ways. In very bad ways. So, and most of them are going to be subtle and sneaky, and you won't realize. You won't realize. A very common thing, I want to point this out. Some sisters might not be happy with this, but it's actually a very common occurrence. You'll find, oftentimes in some Muslim cultures, females, from a young age, they are made to serve everyone in the house. They really worked hard. And they are made to be obedient, and so on and so forth. So they have to serve their father and their brothers and their mother and so on and so forth. Then afterwards, what happens? Until she grows into adulthood, then she is given in marriage, and most of the time, sometimes she doesn't have a big choice there. She doesn't have a big say in that relationship. So sometimes it's an arranged marriage, sometimes it's a cousin, sometimes there's a lot of pressure. That's a good guy, seems to be good, he has a lot of money, he's so on and so. Okay, just from a good family, you just go. So, we're not forcing you. Okay, but they just keep nagging her day and night. We're not forcing you, right? But she gets into the marriage, but in the marriage, she is supposed to serve her husband, like make sure all his clothes are washed and ironed, and his food is ready, his breakfast is ready the moment he wakes up, the moment he comes back, his dinner is ready, and everything is perfect, right? And then she starts having children one after the other, right? Going through pregnancy and whatever comes with pregnancy, and so on and so forth. And she's just working hard. She's giving up herself. She's giving herself to others. Right from being a young girl in her family, then into her marriage, okay? And that is shown as devotion and selflessness and sacrifice. It's a wonderful thing for a mother to do, right? And she has very little choice in all of this. So she doesn't, like her personal preferences, her personal like interests and passions are all sacrificed. So it's all about just running after the kids and the husband and making sure everything's in its place. And it's hard work. It's really extremely hard work. And she's staying up at night with the younger kids, and then she has to wake up to make the breakfast, and she has to prepare the kids for school. She has to wash their clothes. She has to help them do the homework. It's just like there's no rest. And then when she reaches middle age, or afterwards, later on, senior age, now she starts acting funny. She starts challenging her kids, like, where's your loyalty? Like her son, like he's in good terms with his wife, like she's not happy with this. Your wife took you from me. Or the daughter, right? I mean, why are you with your husband all the time? It happens. There's a lot of these cases, by the way. And she's very bitter. She's very resentful. Like, you guys, like, we gave you everything and now you leave us. You leave us to our fate. You're just busy with your kids, and you give, like, we gave you everything and now you give everything to your husband, to your kids. What about me? All the sacrifice, I've done this and that and this and that for you and everything. And sometimes some people become very resentful and they become very toxic. And people wonder why. You wonder why? Because you made wrong choices from day one. Because you've been calling this selflessness when it is subjugation. It's subjugation. It's not a healthy relationship to be like this. People should be given their space. A relationship should be between two people who are at some level equal, emotionally equal. So then people start calling her, oh, she's the typical mother-in-law. Or she's a toxic person. She wants to destroy my life. It's not necessarily like this, but it's been building up. You've been giving all of that stuff good names, devotion, help, and selflessness, and so on and so forth. But you've been swallowing all of these poisons, and now they're going to come out. They're going to come out. They have to. They have to. And by the way, I'm saying these things. I'm not just, by the way, I'm not having joy. I'm not experiencing a lot of joy talking about these things. But there's a lot like this in our community. Muslim communities, there's a lot. Now Muslim countries, oh man, you don't want to see what's going on there. It's even worse. It's even worse. But that's what happens. That's what happens. People suffer a lot. You find some, and sometimes not only ladies, but this is more with ladies because they tend to be more easygoing. It's easy to get a woman to do what you want if you are the father, or if you are the mother, or if you are the husband. It's easy. But you're destroying this person. She's going to become very toxic. But that also happens with men. It happens with men as well. It happens with children. It happens with everyone. So you just have to be careful. You don't swallow something if it's not right. The same here. Sa'd ibn Ubadah is not going to swallow this. He's not going to let that go. It has to be fixed. He realizes that if these people, if we just explain it away, we just wing it, say it, forget, that's the Prophet ﷺ, he knows what he's doing, which is true. But it doesn't register emotionally. It doesn't register emotionally. So the Prophet, he realizes, man, we need to fix this at the root level. At the root level. We can't let this fester. So when he says to the Prophet ﷺ, okay, these people, that's what they say, you've given your people, you've given the Arabs, and the Ansar haven't got anything. The Prophet ﷺ asks Sa'd, he says, فَأَيْنَ أَنْتَ مِنْ ذَلِكَ يَا سَعْدْ. The Prophet ﷺ wants to see, because Sa'd is a leader, and where the leader is makes a big impact on their followers. So he says, where are you, ya Sa'd? Where do you stand with regards to this? Is Sa'd gonna sort of pretend to be play this kind of self-righteousness? Oh yeah, I don't care about this, it's just the younger ones, right? That would be lying. That would be lack of honesty. And this is why we have to give it to that generation. He's speaking with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's a very sensitive situation, and he knows how upsetting this attitude is going to be to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He knows, but he's just going to say it straight. He says, "Where are you, ya Sa'd? Where do you stand with regards to this?" Sa'd says, "Ya Rasulullah, ma ana illa mri'un min qawmi." He says, "O Messenger of Allah, I'm just one of my people." So it's not. He doesn't have an answer. It puzzles him as well. The situation puzzles him. It's not as bad as it is with the youth, but it puzzles me. Okay, like obviously I don't know. I can't make sense of what's going on. That takes a lot of courage. And that's the level of honesty, by the way, that really helps relationships survive hard times. Oftentimes when we think about honesty and like openness, when we can torture the other person with it. Like someone, like once, okay, I need to be honest with my wife. Like, catch her doing something wrong, that's bad. You see, it's bad, you shouldn't be doing it this way. That's not honesty. That's not honesty, man. This is just, you're taking advantage. You're taking advantage. But look at this level of honesty. He said to the Prophet ﷺ what the situation is, because he realized how dangerous and serious it is. Then the Prophet ﷺ asks him straightforward, what about you? He said, where do you stand? The Prophet ﷺ wants to know, because he knows the human dynamics. Leaders, if the leader knows what it is, it will be easy. We can fix that. But if the leader is not able to figure out and understand the situation fully, man, that's much bigger than that. We need a more radical, a deeper action, deeper treatment. So he says, Ya Rasulullah, I'm just one of my people. The Prophet ﷺ says, فَاجْمَعْ لِي قَوْمَكَ, bring my people to you. Or bring your people to me. Bring them to me. So we have to address that. And that shows communication is important. Communication is important. You might do the right thing, but if you do not inform people whose lives, are connected to that decision, you risk being misunderstood. And don't blame others. Don't blame others. Communicate. You need to communicate. Make yourself clear. And there's why there's a like some sort of verb, like a proverb in Arabic. They say, "Al-bayan yatrud al-shaytan." Being clear expels shaitan away. Shaitan brings doubt. Shaitan brings dissension and problems among people. He puts doubt, plants doubt in your mind about me. Why did I do this? Why did he do this? Why did he do that? Maybe he means this and that, right? Shaitan, that's how he brings about enmity among people. But when you clarify to people, okay, you leave no room for conjecture. People cannot guess why you did that. You just stating it. So you don't leave no room for shaitan. Shaitan fills in those gaps, fill in the blanks. The Prophet ﷺ one day was with his wife Safiya at night. He was walking with his wife Safiya at night. Two companions walk past him. They say, Assalamu alaikum, and they walk away. The Prophet ﷺ says, Wa alaikum assalam. He says, Innaha Safiya. This is Safiya, by the way. He said, Wa alaikum assalam. This is Safiya. He says, Ya Rasulullah, are we going to have doubts about you? Like you're walking with some stranger woman? Are we going to have doubts about the Messenger of Allah? Are we going to have doubts about the Messenger of Allah? The Prophet says, Inna shaytana yajri min ibni Adam majra ad-dami min al-uruq. Shaitan runs through the veins, or through Adam, through the son of Adam, just like blood runs through the veins. There's no square millimeter in your body where there's no blood vessels. And that means shaitan is just with you all the time, jumping at every opportunity. So again, you need to keep things clear. When you keep things clear, you avoid misunderstanding. When you under-communicate, there's a lot of problems. There's a lot of misunderstanding. People are not on the same page. And you'll be surprised how people differ in interpreting one situation, by the way. You might think, oh, that's self-evident, so clear, this is how the situation is. No, man. People see from different perspectives, different angles. So you have to communicate. And that's why there's a rule in leadership. They say it's impossible to over-communicate. That means no matter how much you communicate, you cannot overdo it. You always fall short. You always fall short. Why? Because you just have to keep communicating. Because you don't realize where people's blind spots are. You don't realize. You just don't see it. People come with interpretations of certain situations. I'm telling you, if you deal with marital disputes, Allah musta'an, you're going to see how people can see the same story as completely different stories. Completely different. So that's the capacity for interpretation. That's a human capacity that we have. So you need to be careful. Communicate, especially with your spouse. Communicate with your children. Oftentimes parents think like there are parents who are so busy working because they want to sort of secure a good life, a good level of life, living standard for their children. And thus they don't spend time with their children. They don't get to spend time with their children. They don't get to have patience with their children. Because you come back home burnt out. And your kids, when they see you, they smile, they don't want to play with you. You just go away from me. Like I don't want to see no one. I want to go, like I want to hide in the basement, and I want to just time to myself. Like you're going crazy because you're just spread so thin. You overwork yourself. So you think, my kids understand. They understand that I'm doing this hard work for them. They have no clue, man. They have no clue. All they see is that you don't want to play with them. That's how they see it. In their small mind, that's how it appears. Same with spouse, wife. Someone says, well, like women, you have to keep reminding them how much you love them every 5 minutes. And if you don't do it, they'll ask you. They will ask you, do you love me? Come on, man, I just told you that. Like last year I told you that. That's how men think. I told you last year how much I love you. I told you when we first got married, I told you, so it's done deal. Khalas, like I don't have to do that again. No, man, every 5 minutes, set your alarm clock. Okay, I love you. There was a guy, I forgot, he was an IT guy, and what he did, he put together some kind of an software. At the time there was no apps, but he put a software on his personal computer where he basically sends his wife sweet words. So he connected to some kind of, I don't know, like this kind of reference website that has a lot of like romantic statements or words and so on and so forth. So he connected the software to that website. So every day it comes up with, a few times a day, it comes up with a sweet word, romantic word, and it goes straight to his wife's inbox. And it was all automated for years. So his wife was getting all of these messages, thinking, oh, he's like such a romantic guy, right? And he was playing PlayStation all the way. Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ says to Sa'd ibn Ubadah, "Ijma' li qawmak." Bring your people to me. And that requires courage. You've just come out of a battle. Actually, 2 battles. You've just conquered Mecca, a very huge step in the history of Islam. And it's not an easy thing. Like, emotionally, it's quite demanding. And then 19 days later, you go and fight this army. You almost lost the battle at the beginning. Then you managed to win it. And then you chase these people to their home town, to At-Ta'if. And you set a siege around them, but you can't break in. So you withdraw. And then you start actually distributing the spoils of war. And people are we mentioned some of those, like people are running after the Prophet ﷺ, give me, because they see the Prophet ﷺ has given this person and that person, give me. And the people actually chase the Prophet ﷺ and they corner him. And there was a tree behind him to the point that his own cloak or his own izar, like the upper garment, it got stuck on the branches of the tree, and it was pulled off him. And he says, oh, people, like, give me my garment back, like, give me my upper rida back. Give it to me. Wallahi, if I have those, like, valleys full of wealth, I would give it to you and I would leave nothing to myself. But, so, that's the moment the Prophet ﷺ ran out of all the spoils of war. By the way, there was nothing left. So some of the Bedouins, especially the nomads, were very rough and aggressive in their approach. They were chasing the Prophet, give us and give us and give us and give us. And they literally chased the Prophet into the tree. So imagine, it's very confusing. There's thousands of people and there's a lot of demanding situations. Yet the Prophet ﷺ knows I have to address this now. I have to deal with it. It takes a lot of courage, takes a lot of composure, takes a lot of emotional power, and it takes a lot of focus. You should be distracted. You should be, you should actually be completely drained. But the Prophet ﷺ says, let's address that. And it's a very sensitive situation. Like, you need to choose your words carefully. When people are in a emotionally aroused and it's a very sensitive situation, people feel betrayed and people feel deeply hurt, or it's similar to a state of paranoia. And it's just like when someone is angry and tell them, hey, calm down, it's okay. And they tell you, it's not okay, I don't want to calm down. And everything you say to try to calm them down makes them feel worse. And they take offense to the smallest things you say, right? That's how the situation is. So you need to choose your words very carefully. So the Prophet, so Sa'd goes, he brings the Ansar, all of them, under one sort of huge, massive tent. And they all sit there. Sa'd goes to the Prophet and he says, Ya Rasulullah, قد اجتمع لك هذا الحي من الأنصار. O Messenger of Allah, the Ansar are there. They all gathered together. Prophet goes to them. So he starts by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he says, Ya ma'shar al-Ansar. Hope you really listen to first the honesty of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the skill, the conversational skill that is again coupled with honesty. There's no manipulation there. There's no manipulation. There's just truth. And he is calling upon the best in the Ansar. He's calling on the best of the Ansar. He counts on their faith. That's how he deals with it. If he were to use the same kind of language with the new Muslims, it won't work. It would backfire. But the Prophet ﷺ knows who these people are and how to address them. So he's saying, Ya ma'ashar al-Ansar, ما قالة بلغتني عنكم. What is the statement that I hear about you? I heard something that you said. وجدة وجدتموها في أنفسكم. And something that you emotionally found hard. Something you felt that was against you. That was something that I did against you. And here you can tell from the words the Prophet ﷺ is speaking, it's very decisively. Like he's not being smiley, he's actually being very straight up to them. He says, أَلَمْ آتِكُمْ ضُلَّالًا فَهَدَاكُمُ اللَّهِ. Didn't I come to you when you were misguided and Allah guided you through me? وَمُتَفَرِّقِينَ فَأَلَّفَكُمُ اللَّهُ بِي. And you were divided amongst yourselves and Allah brought unity among you by means of me. وَعَالَةً فَأَغْنَاكُمُ اللَّهُ بِي. And you were suffering from lack and poverty and Allah gave you abundance through me. قالوا, they said, بَلِ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ أَمَنُّ وَأَفْضَلُ. They said, Allah and His Messenger have given us more than that. More than that. So we agree, and more than that. So the Prophet says, أَلَا تُجِيبُونِي يَا مَعْشَرَ الْأَنصَارِ. He says, why don't you answer me? Why don't you answer me? They already gave an answer. Right? They already said, Allah and His Messenger did more for us than what you just said. It's more. It's even more than that. The Prophet is saying, why don't you answer me? So they said, وَبِمَاذَا نُجِيبُكَ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ وَلِلَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ الْمَنُّ وَالْفَضْلِ. They said, what should we say, O Messenger of Allah? Like we're just basically saying, all favors are from Allah and then His Messenger ﷺ upon us. Like we are showered with that. Listen to what the Prophet ﷺ says, and this is radical honesty. Like there is zero manipulation. And by the way, manipulation, we all do it. All do it to the people that are closest to us. The Prophet ﷺ says, they're saying, what should we say? Like, what answer are you looking for? He said, أَمَا وَاللَّهِ لَوْ شِئْتُمْ لَقُلْتُمْ فَلَصَدَقْتُمْ وَصُدِّقْتُمْ أَتَيْتَنَا مُكَذَّبًا فَصَدَّقْنَاكَ وَمَخْذُولًا فَنَصَرْنَاكَ وَطَرِيدًا فَآوَيْنَاكَ وَعَائِلًا فَأَغْنَيْنَاكَ. Prophet says, by Allah, if you wanted, you could have said, and you would be truthful. If you wanted to say the following, and you could have said it, and you would be truthful, and I would believe you, and I would confirm that. You would have said, you came to us being rejected, and we believed in you. You were let down, we supported you. You were chased out of your town, we gave you shelter, we gave you our town. And you came to us penniless, with nothing, and we gave you our wealth. You could have said that, right? he is stating their answer for them. He realizes they're too shy to say that. But the Prophet ﷺ doesn't want to brush it off. He doesn't want to brush it off, because that's what we do oftentimes in our relationships, right? We give a silencing answer. We think we're being smart, right? We sort of have a good comeback on the person. They can't, they don't have an immediate answer. They feel baffled, right? And think, okay, perfect, I silence them. What about the problem that is underneath? That's going to get worse. What about that? So it's not wise. It's not wise. Look at the honesty. The Prophet ﷺ is stating what they could have said. The answer that they could have, and they're saying it's true. If you were to say it, it's true, and I confirm it, it was true. Then he says, so now he's actually, and that's what the beauty about this, he's showing them, hey, it's a fair game. It's a fair game. I'm not going to use my status as the messenger of Allah to silence you. Again, I'm not going to choose this position of me being the husband to silence my wife, right? Because I have the authority. I'm not going to use my physical power and appearance to silence my kid. And I'm not going to use that to silence someone else. Just some people are not very verbal. They're not very eloquent with their speech. And you just give them that powerful answer and they don't know what to say. I think, yeah, I own them. I got them. You didn't. You set yourself up for something worse. And it's going to grow. And that's, by the way, what happens with the marriages. You find after a long time in a marriage, all of a sudden, usually happens, husband walks away on the family. Forget it. Why? Because 30 years he's been going through so much, right? And every time he tries to address that, it just gets lost in a drama. Or you find a wife after so long in a marriage, okay, see you in the hereafter. That's it. I don't want you anymore. Why? Well, it's been happening, right? You think you're being smart to silence your spouse, to give them a smart answer. You can't have a comeback on this, right? I got you. Well, yeah, we'll see what's going to happen. What's going to pop up 20 years from now? And you won't make the connection. You won't make the connection. And you know what happens, by the way? Like statistics now, they indicate when someone goes through a divorce, by the way, that's one of the most difficult things that could happen. Not just emotionally, financially, socially, everything. Like the price of divorce these days has never been in human history as bad as it is now. It's extremely bad. For both. So the Prophet ﷺ is giving, hey, it's a fair deal. Here you are. I know you out of respect and shyness, bashfulness, you're not going to say that. But here I will say it for you. We want a fair deal. I don't want to play games with you. That's not what the Prophet ﷺ does. And you know what? You win their hearts. And again, as a Muslim, why do you want to play games? There's no way you can justify that. Okay. So the Prophet ﷺ, then he says, he changes now the way he addresses them. Now he starts addressing the heart. He says, أَوَجَدْتُمْ فِي أَنفُسِكُمْ يَا مَعْشَرَ الْأَنصَارِ فِي لُعَاعَةٍ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا تَأَلَّفْتُ بِهَا قَوْمًا لِيُسْلِمُوا وَوَكَلْتُكُمْ إِلَىٰ إِسْلَامِكُمْ. He says, oh Ansar, do you find it hard? You find a grudge in your hearts or in your chests with regards to some of the beauties of this world, a little bit of the beauty of this world that I have given to some people in order to win them over into Islam? Is that the reason for your grudge and this feeling? And I have left you for your Islam. I count on your faith, so that's why I didn't give you. Then he says, أَفَلَا تَرْضَوْنَ يَا مَعْشَرَ الْأَنصَارِ أَنْ يَذْهَبَ النَّاسُ بِالشَّاةِ وَالْبَعِيرِ وَتَرْجِعُونَ بِرَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ فِي رِحَالِكُمْ. Won't you be happy, won't you be pleased, O Ansar, that people go back to their homes having taken camels and sheep, when you, the Ansar, you go back home, and with you is the messenger of Allah. So he's taking them to a different level of logic. Wake up to the reality. You guys are caught up in this game of having more, getting more, right? Then he says, فَوَالَّذِي نَفْسُ مُحَمَّدٍ بِيَدِهِ لَوْلَا الْهِجْرَةِ لَكُنْتُمْ مَرْءًا مِنَ الْأَنصَارِ. The Prophet says, by the one in whose hand my soul is, had it not been for the fact that I migrated to Medina, I would have been from the Ansar. I'm from you. That's what he's saying. But technically, because I came from Mecca as an immigrant, I'm from the Muhajirin. But I am indeed from you. وَلَوْ سَلَكَ النَّاسُ شِعْبًا وَسَلَكَ الْأَنصَارُ شِعْبًا لَسَلَكْتُ شِعْبَ الْأَنصَارِ. And if people, all of humanity, take one path, I will take the path of the Ansar. People take one path, the Ansar take one path, I will take the path of the Ansar. الأنصار شعار والناس دثار. Now this is a little bit cultural. So he says, so the Arabs used to have two levels of garment. Today we have the same thing. We have an undershirt and an underwear, right? So let's say we have an undershirt and then we have maybe some sort of a jersey over it, or a shirt over it, or a jumper. So the Arabs as well, they used to have a first garment that would be like sticking to, like in direct contact with their skin, but then they would have the outer garment which is outside. Again, similar thing, 2 layers of clothing. So the Prophet is saying, Al-Ansaru shi'ar. The Ansar are more like my undershirt. Like they're so close to me, like they are connected to my skin. Whereas the other people that you have, those Muslims outside, these people are like my outer garment, they're like my jumper. So he's saying, you are the closest to me. You are the closest, you're like my undershirt. You're so close to me. You're like, my skin is to your skin. That's where we are together. But other people are on the outer level, on the outer, level of clothing. So sort of, they're the outer garment, but they're not as close to me. Then the Prophet says, Allahumma arham al-Ansar. Oh Allah, have mercy upon the Ansar. Wa abna al-Ansar, and the children of the Ansar. Wa abna al-Ansar, and the children of the Ansar. So the Ansar started weeping and crying now. They were in tears, completely in tears, until their beards were wet with the tears. And then they said, رَضِينَا بِرَسُولِ اللَّهِ قِسْمًا وَحَظًّا. They say, we are pleased with the Messenger of Allah as our share. That's a profound, really profound situation. Like, I personally have no words to even digest this fully. This is a situation where the leadership and the maturity and the depth of the Prophet ﷺ manifests itself so beautifully. Like who would be able to handle a situation just like that in these conditions? Well, very very hectic. It's a very hectic situation, but the kind of depth, and that's the centeredness of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And look at the Ansar, how the Prophet addresses them and how they respond and how he takes their mind and their understanding to the next level. Is that you think it's about how wealth is, you think it's about numbers, you think it's about camels and sheep. These people are, all they're walking away with is what? Is this wealth. Which is obviously like, one day you get it, next day you lose it. It comes and goes. You are going back with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Really, that's a moment of awakening. It's a moment of yaqadha. Like, wake up to the truth. Wake up to the truth. And sometimes it happens in our daily life. Sometimes you're in a situation. The other day I go on. It was called a couple of days ago. So I saw this beautiful sandals. It was looked really nice sandals. And I haven't had a good one for years, so I thought it was on Facebook Marketplace for $5, and I thought, oh man, that's a good deal. So I probably was there for a few minutes. So I asked about it, and the person said it was pending, and then I got a message that it was not, like the state of pending was taken off. So then I contacted the person again. I said, it's still available, and it was a lady. She says, yes, it's still available. I said, okay, I can pick it up tomorrow. She says, I can leave it for you outside. It will be in a bag. Put the money in the mailbox. Perfect. So I go and I find the sandals, and apparently when I went it was about 2 p.m. and it was Wednesday. Was it Wednesday? It was Wednesday, yeah. Extremely cold, very cold, right? So I like to check the sandals, make sure they're the right size. So I get one of them, and so I fix it. It cracks. It was frozen, and obviously it wasn't genuine leather. So I could tell it was plastic. So it cracked. I said, okay. Was that? But it wasn't my size either, anyway. So I thought, like, I wasn't going to get it. It's a smaller size, but it cracked in mine. I just put it, and then I messaged the lady, and I say, listen, I just checked it. It's not my size. It's small, so I'm not going to take it. But when I picked it up, it cracked in my hand because it was frozen. So if you want, I'll compensate you for that. And I thought to myself, like, man, it's $5. It's not a big deal, right? But she really acted nasty, and she says, like, on Facebook, you don't try out things, like, you just buy them. I said, okay, I don't do that. But anyway, then I said, okay, I'll give you the money. But I already drove off. And she wasn't at home. There was obviously, it seems like there was no one at home. So I said, I'll give you the $5. Not a big deal. I'll put them in the mailbox. She just goes off on me, like, on Facebook you don't try things out, and well, it's not like a store, and it goes all. I said, listen, I just sent a text and I said, listen, I'll put the money in the mailbox. So I go and put the money in the mailbox, and I go, and that's it, and I leave it. And I think to myself, really, had I just gone without putting the $5, I would feel bad about myself. Still, I mean, regardless who was wrong, I don't think it's like she was wrong or I was wrong completely, but it cracked in my hand. So I'd rather take responsibility for that. So morally speaking, I was at peace. I was really at peace. And look at, I mean, it's $5 like it's gone. Sometimes there are situations when there is thousands of dollars involved, and you're really like, for you it's a matter of life and death. But when you look at that 3 years down the line in your life, you say, man, it wasn't worth it. Because even if I had those 3,000 years, they won't be here now. They would be gone. They'd literally be gone. So that's money. So the Prophet was sort of making a more profound argument. He was saying to them, people are going to take that money, right? But you take the Prophet, that's your share. Wow, that was again a moment of awakening. So the way the Prophet managed this was extremely, like, I want to say professional, but it was more than that. It was profound. It was wise. That's wisdom. Al-Hafiz Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah, in his book Fath al-Bari, he actually comments on this, and he just draws some lessons from this. And he says the way the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam sort of puts in order the blessings of Allah upon the Ansar, the sequence, how the Prophet ﷺ built that argument was so profound and so powerful. So he comments on this, and he basically says, like, look at what the Prophet ﷺ reminded them of. First, the most important of the gifts of Allah, that you were misguided, you were lost, and Allah guided you through me. That's the number one. That's the top of the list. Then second one is that you were split among yourselves, but you were divided, and Allah brought you together in a state of unity by means of me. And then you were in a state of lack and poverty, and Allah brought you richness and riches through me. So Ibn Hajar is saying this is a very beautiful sequence, because humans need faith more than anything else. They need guidance more than anything else. And then comes their social well-being, which is obviously connected to their emotional well-being, which is people getting on together. And that's why it's actually profound. It's an important thing. Having social stability is extremely important, because if you don't have social stability, by the way, you live in a troubled society, or you yourself do not fit in with the society, it's hard for you to function. It's hard for you to have a healthy life, even in your own home. It's hard. It's just hard. So when you're having issues, let's say fights and feuds with some of your siblings or some of your brothers and sisters or family, it's hard really to focus on work. It's hard to, focus on your family. You'll always be troubled. It will always bother you. It will always bug you. In the background, it will really drain your energy. And And then the last thing the Prophet ﷺ said, you were poor and Allah gave you a lot of riches through me. And again, that shows that material wealth comes at the bottom of these three. These three. Guidance is the most precious thing. And then that kind of unity and the social stability and comfort. And then the wealth. All of them are blessings, but if you want to order them or put them in an order, hierarchical order, that's how they come according to the level of their importance and their impact on you. That's why you find there are poor people who are, when they have the faith, they live a meaningful and wonderful life. Yeah, they struggle and they go through pain, they go through moments of sadness and they go through trials, that's true. But there is a level of contentment and level of peace in their heart that compensates for that, makes it up. And again, when people have a very meaningful social life, they might not be rich, but actually makes their life very stable, very meaningful, and very rich. And there are people who have the wealth, but they lack those two things, and they're struggling. It still doesn't mean that wealth is not good, because when wealth is there, it does make life easy for you. It does especially if you use it wisely, you know how to manage it. It actually is it's a powerful resource. To have it, it's a great advantage. And we shouldn't play it down. We shouldn't play it down. It's not a virtue being poor, by the way. It's not virtuous. It's not virtuous being poor. Okay, then the Prophet ﷺ, by the way, he sort of clarifies why he gave those people, why he distributed the spoils of war this way. And that's what I'm going to close with, inshallah. And it shows that this is actually guided by revelation. The Prophet ﷺ says, إِنِّي أُعْطِي قَوْمًا أَخَافُ ضَلَعَهُمْ وَجَزَعَهُمْ. The Prophet ﷺ says, I give some people out of fear to avoid their crookedness and their paranoia. So there are people who are not all people are good. There are people, no matter how good you treat them, they're not going to be good. But the Prophet ﷺ wants to mitigate their evil. The Prophet ﷺ wants to sort of reduce and minimize the damage that comes through these people. So he gives them. He gives them. He wins them over. He wins them over. And that's something extremely important, by the way. I remember some of the dua, asked Shaykh bin Baz rahimahullah ta'ala. They said, what do we do with people who are not with the sunnah, who are against the sunnah? He said, don't make enemies. He said, the people that you can't win over to the side of the sunnah, people you can't win them over to this, try to neutralize them. Try to neutralize them. In the sense, do not turn them into enemies. So it's not necessary that everyone who disagrees with you, or everyone that you profoundly oppose what they believe in, you don't have to turn them into enemies. It's not a wise thing. It's not wise, by the way, to increase your enemies. It's just one of the worst things you can do. Because life and its trials are enough, so you don't need more. You really don't need more. So if there is no extreme, unless you are left in a position where you have no other choice, you should not put yourself in an enmity with someone, even if they disagree with you. It's not a virtue, and it's not wise to win enemies, and it's not brave, by the way, to win enemies. So the Prophet ﷺ he said, I gave those people because I want to avoid their crookedness and their paranoia and their fear. So some of those were fearful, or we're going against everything and against everyone. So the Prophet ﷺ wants to sort of give them, because he knows once you give them, they're not going to bring about that kind of argument. And this has to do, by the way, this shows that the Prophet ﷺ also has a profound understanding of how human behavior is. By the way, it's like anyone who has even the least exposure to social sciences, it's obvious. And anyone who has some sort of I would say careful observant who considers humans, how humans behave, you know that actually humans say what they don't mean. Humans say what they don't mean. Not only children, you find children, when a child gets upset, they say to their mother, I don't love you, I hate you. Well, the mother, if she's obviously, if she's okay, she knows the child doesn't mean that. It's so obvious in the kids, but with adults as well, there's so many things that most of what we say is just a bluff, is not a real thing. Really, it's not a real thing. We just, oftentimes, like, we reject something and we justify why we reject it. We say, I reject it because of that. And it sounds very logical, right? But actually, with a careful examination, it's not the case. And that's what's called motivated reasoning. And by the way, it's known in neuroscience now that a lot of our brain energy goes into justifying the emotional decisions that we make. So we make a decision already and we're not aware of that. But then our minds start working, our brains start working to make a case for that choice. And then when it comes to our awareness, it seems as if we arrived at that through logic. That's known by experiments, through experimentation, it's known. So the Prophet ﷺ knows that these people, they're going to say, oh, we fear the Arabs, we fear that, and so on. But the Prophet ﷺ knows, okay, that these people feel they don't see faith and the value of faith, so they want some kind of gain. And they're going to come up with excuses. So if you give them that gain, financial gain, okay, automatically the other excuses will evaporate. Then the Prophet says, وَأَكِلُوا أَقْوَامًا إِلَى مَا جَعَلَ اللَّهُ فِي قُلُوبِهِم مِّنَ الْخَيْرِ وَالْغِنَى مِنْهُمْ عَمْرُ بْنُ تَغْلِبٍ. So the Prophet says, then other people, I leave them to what Allah has put in their hearts with regards to goodness and a sense of wealth and abundance, richness. And that's obviously, that comes from faith. Then he names one person from those, is Amr ibn Taghlib. Then the Prophet says, إِنِّي لَأُعْطِي رِجَالًا حَدِيثُ عَهْدِهِمْ بِكُفْرٍ. I give people because they just left kufr and they just came into Islam, and there's a lot of connections they have to the state of kufr. So they're not established in Islam, so I'm going to give them. Humans are humans. You can't be very idealistic and say, okay, people should come to Islam for the sake of coming to Islam. Well, no. No. And by the way, what prevented the Arabs from becoming Muslim earlier, prior to that point? It wasn't they didn't know it was the truth. It was basically just to preserve the status, and again holding on to the norms, and thinking that Islam had no chances of being victorious. That's why the moment the Prophet ﷺ took over Mecca and became the major power in the Arabian Peninsula, all of a sudden the Arabs all around the Arabian Peninsula, all of them just wanted to become Muslim. So again, humans function at more than one level. So the Prophet ﷺ knew that these people would actually embrace Islam, but what was holding them back was worldly concerns. If you remove these worldly concerns, either poverty or lack or fear or anticipation or lack of trust in the future, etc., if you handle those, you just have removed the barriers from their hearts to accept Islam. Otherwise, they have hearts that are willing to accept Islam. So don't mix this with intention. Don't mix this with, they just became Muslim for the money. No, humans are much more complex than that. So the Prophet ﷺ, that's what he says. And he says, إِنَّ قُرَيْشًا حَدِيثُ عَهْدٍ بِجَاهِلِيَّةٍ وَمُصِيبَةٍ عَدَمِ جَاهِلِيَّةٍ وَمُصِيبَةٍ وَإِنِّي أَرَدْتُ أَنْ أَجْبُرَهُمْ وَأَتَأَلَّفَهُم. The Prophet ﷺ says, Quraysh have just recently come from Jahiliyyah, and they have recently come out of a huge disaster, and that was when the Prophet ﷺ took over Mecca. They lost. It was a huge knockout. They were knocked out completely. So the Prophet ﷺ, he says, I wanted to fix their brokenness, and I wanted to win their hearts over. But why? Because you're dealing with humans. Now yes, but the Prophet ﷺ dealt idealistically with the Ansar. He's knowing the Ansar have faith. Yeah, I'm going to leave you to your faith. So that's how you deal with everyone, based on their level. And the Prophet says, أما والذي نفس محمد بيده لجعيل بن سراقة خير من طلاع الأرض كلهم مثل عيين بن حصن والأقرع بن حابس ولكني تألفتهما ليسلما ووكلت جعيل بن سراقة إلى إسلامه. The Prophet says, by the one in whose hand my soul is, by Allah, there's a man called Ju'ayl ibn Suraqa. He was a Muslim. Ju'ayl ibn Suraqa himself is better than the earth full of Uyayna ibn Hisn. He was from Ghatafan, the leader of Ghatafan. وَالْأَقْرَعَ ibn Habis وَلَكِنِّي تَأَلَّفْتُهُمَا يُسْلِمًا. So one person, Ju'ayl ibn Suraqa, was one of the companions. He's better than the earth full of Uyayna ibn Hisn, the leader of Ghatafan, who just become Muslim, and Al-Aqra' bin Habis from the Ahabish, from the other Arabs who are around Mecca, the Bedouins among the Mecca, one of their leaders, most influential leaders. So that person is better than the earth full of these two people. But the Prophet ﷺ did not give to that person, he gave to those two people. The Prophet ﷺ says, I wanted to win them over, but I left Ju'ayl to his own faith. So the Prophet ﷺ is showing exactly why he distributed the war booty in this fashion. And it shows again that sometimes, it's very important to see sometimes the further end of something and not jump to conclusions, especially when it comes from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Well, I find often among some of the youth, those who especially swallow the critique that some atheists level at Islam and at Muslims, is that their critique is very superficial. Like something sounds like not right. Okay, but you don't do that in science. You don't judge things on face value. You have to, put it through a process of experimentation, and you have to see what happens over time. So there are strategies that you actually act upon, and they pay off in the short term, but they sustain a damage that will destroy you on the long run. And there are things that don't seem to pay off in the short term, but they are a very good investment on the long term. This thing only shows with time, over time. So jumping to conclusions based on something you saw is not a wise thing. It doesn't mean you don't mentally question something and try to investigate it. That's good, because we're not supposed to accept everything just like that. We're supposed to look into the evidence. We're supposed to verify things before we take them in. Again, we moved slowly today, but I think there's a lot of lessons, really a lot of lessons to learn from this, subhanAllah. So we'll stop here. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We can take a couple of questions if there is any. Questions? Next time, inshallah. We haven't got to that point yet. Well, yeah. Questions? No questions? Khalas, we'll see you. Yeah, tfadal. Okay, the Muhajirin, there were a lot of them, they had no homes still up until that point. Had nothing, no money. And a lot of those Muhajirin, when they left Mecca, they left their wealth behind. Because obviously wealth was not all gold and silver, like money you could carry, like cash. A lot of it was possessions, like a house or some sheep and camels, and they couldn't run away with that. So they had to leave it. So the Prophet ﷺ is sort of compensating them for this. طيب, we'll see you inshallah next week. وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين.